Very good news on the court packing front. I don't think it's going to happen. Now, for several months now, justices on the court, this actually began with Ruth Bader Ginsburg saying she didn't think court packing was a good idea. 9 was a perfectly good number. Subsequently, Justice Breyer. Now, let's notice that these are two very left-wing progressives on the court coming out against the idea of packing, and partly because they both have argued it'll destroy the independence of the judiciary. Conservative justices have also been having their say recently. Samuel Alito, Justice Clarence Thomas, and also Amy Coney Barrett, all of them making perhaps a different kind of argument, but arriving at the same destination, namely, the court is not a partisan body in the narrow sense. Of course, it's political in that it's part of the political structure of our government, but it works in a sense separate from and to some degree against. It protects rights against the majority. That's what it's there for. Now, Biden put together a commission that many people even called it the Court Packing Commission because they were so certain that it was going to recommend some form of court packing. The degree of packing, the pace of change, this was probably up for discussion and argument. But that the commission would come out and say, hey, let's pack the court, seemed almost indubitable, seemed for sure. There were a couple of token conservatives on the commission, but in no way did they make up the majority. And this was almost like, having a sort of a Romney and a Murkowski. So they're there just to give some bipartisan legitimacy to what would end up being, it seemed, a progressive and a left-wing recommendation. But, this is a huge but, the commission has released its kind of preliminary results. They're not the final results, but they, being preliminary, they're sort of an outline of where the commission is going. And they've released also, this is admirable. They didn't just put out, here's where we came out. They released 200 pages of discussion materials in which it's very clear that when they're considering various issues, and they're not just considering the issue of the number of justices on the court, they're considering issues like should there be term limits on the court. They're considering other types of issues, like should the court's jurisdiction over certain types of issues be limited? Should the court not be able to pronounce on certain types of issues? They also consider whether there could be proposed a legislative veto over certain types of court decisions, particularly with legislative supermajority. So they're considering a pretty broad menu, and it's very clear from these discussion pages, which I've only thumbed through so far, that they give a kind of thorough and detailed summary of the arguments from both, and in some cases more from all sides. So this is a commission that is taking its work seriously. And the remarkable thing is, from their preliminary conclusions, they are against court packing. Now, if the final report comes out strongly against court packing, I think this will intellectually blow up the groundwork. I think this is Biden's own commission telling him not to do it. Of course, it raises the question of, is it possible, I'm just thinking out loud here, is it possible that Biden wanted, or the Biden people wanted this outcome? It seems to me obvious that if they wanted to get a court packing recommendation, just stack the commission with court packers. But although there are progressives and liberal scholars on the commission, it appears that not merely the conservatives, but a number of the liberals have concluded that this is too dangerous. We don't want to go there. We don't want to create a court that is a mere reflection of public opinion. Let's remember the court is expected to stand where necessary against public opinion. Quote, the risks of court expansion are considerable, including that it could undermine the very goal of some of its proponents in restoring the court's legitimacy. And then it points out that polls show that a majority of the American people oppose court expansion or court packing. So really what the commission is arguing here is that the people who want to pack the court always say, well, listen, this court is illegitimate, it's too partisan, we want a non-partisan court, therefore let's pack the court. And what the commission is saying is, wait a minute, if you pack the court by stacking it with, for example, 4 more liberal justices to give the Democrats an immediate left-wing majority, you are further degrading the partisanship of the court. Regardless of whether or not the court is partisan now, it's going to be nakedly partisan if you do that. Now, the commission appears to be more sympathetic, although not entirely so, to the idea of having term limits. But even then, and this is not an idea, by the way, that I'm strongly against at all, the term limits would be something like 18 years. When you're appointed on the court, you're appointed for a period of 18 years. Let's remember, this would apply to Democratic and Republican nominees alike. There would obviously have to be some debate about when you start and that sort of thing. But in principle, the idea of having justices serve for a certain designated and fairly long, as we can see, term, I think is not inherently a bad thing. The left is sort of screaming about all this, and that tells you that this is good for us. Quote, "This report is a disappointment to anyone who hoped for a hard-hitting effort to address the Supreme Court's deep troubles." Rhode Island Democrat Sheldon Whitehouse. Brian Fallon, executive director of the Demand Justice. This is the group that's, by the way, been trying to lobby Justice Breyer. Please step down. We need to appoint someone in your place right now. So this clown says, this was not even close to being worth the wait. He goes, this paralysis by analysis. So think about it. He's claiming that analysis here is a form of paralysis. Is what you would expect from a commission made up mostly of academics. He wants a commission made up of someone else. What, gay rights activists and trans activists and BLM? You want that kind of a commission? You're going to have legal scholars on a legal commission that's looking at the future of the Supreme Court. Sherilyn Ifill, the president of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. By the way, she's on the commission, but she too is wailing about the commission. And then here's Slate magazine. Biden's Supreme Court commission walked straight into the legitimacy trap. Now, I was reading this article in Slate to see what their critique of the commission really is. And it's basically that, quote, that the commission doesn't seem to recognize that, quote, the court is working to subvert democracy. And I sort of chuckled when I read that because I thought, wait a minute. What they mean, of course, is that the court is working to not simply be in sync with the democratic majoritarian process by going against what the majority wants on certain issues. The court is, quote, subverting democracy. But we don't have a system of direct democracy in that sense. We have a system of majority rule consistent with minority rights. And who's going to protect these minority rights if not the court? So the court, in that sense, is serving democracy, serving constitutional democracy by striking down majority rule when it is inconsistent with the Constitution. So you see the utter incoherence of what Slate is arguing. They're arguing for a conception of government utterly alien to the one that we have. And they don't seem to even understand what the purpose is of having a Supreme Court in the first place. Anyway, whether this is by Biden's design or ineptitude, the fact of the matter is we have a Biden commission that appears to be throwing its weight against the idea of packing the court. And for that, I think we can all be grateful.